Oh, I guess no.
Yeah, so this will be your web browser setting, versus
But what if my web browser
that's up to the documentation whether it's compatible or not.
I want someone else to read it.
That is your job, though.
Well, they write it for developers, not for people learning to be developers. So it's kind of difficult sometimes.
That's our job.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Monitors are still not working, but I have forwarded again. Let's see. Apparently, there were some people trying to fix it. The last time they came in, they saw monitors running, and they said, "Oh, it's fixed." But today, George was telling that he told them, actually, if you plug the laptop, it never works. And then they were like, "Oh, that's the issue." So, yeah.
I swear.
Let's see. So, is it start? Yeah. All right. So let's see. What are we going to do today? Today, we are going to look at a framework that is kind of close to MongoDB. It's called Mongoose. And we'll do some definition, what it is, and then we'll do some exercises around it. We'll see how it helps with MongoDB. Okay, but before we begin, we'll do a quick warm-up exercise. This is based on Mongo. As you can see, there are still quite a few exercises that we are going to do today. So what I'm going to do is we'll do a warm-up more verbally. We'll do it together. Other than writing the code, we'll see to make sure that we understand the concept from Mongo. Okay? So for this exercise, let me first go ahead and run this so that you guys can see what it actually does, and then we'll go through this together. So, okay, let's see, where am I? CD13. Solved. Okay. So I'm going to run my app. So already did the npm install. If you guys are wondering, I did the npm install previously, so that's why I have the node modules folder. And I'm also running MongoD on a different terminal. I have it over here, so that's why it's connected to my database now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open a new browser and then go to localhost 3000 and see what it comes up with. Okay, so this is my, when I run this, this is my interface. This is the exercise. This is what it is doing. So what the exercise does is, the solution is you can enter a title and then an author. Okay, and then you can add new, and this will add it to the database, to Mongo. Okay. Now the other feature is, if you see mark read and mark read over here, if I click something as mark read, oops, let me refresh this. It should shift over here and come up with a button saying mark as unread. Okay, so it's just kind of like a Boolean. If you have to take a guess, let me do this one again. If I read this book, it comes to this table saying that it has been read, or I can say mark as unread, and it comes up over here. Okay, so a couple of features here. Add new, you can put in the book title, book author, and do add new, then the book is added. And then you can switch it around saying if it has been read or it has not been read. Okay, there doesn't seem to be a delete functionality. So the solution, if you look at this one, oops, if you see, I have a warm-up database, and that's what the code is doing. We'll look at the code. But from this, you can tell I have a database called warm-up, and then I have a collection called books. Okay, usually the collections are plural. So it says book, and then I have like 3 documents in it. All right, so authors and books. Okay, if I open this, the details are here. So that's what the interface is doing. So if we take a look at the code, let me, I'm going to close this connection. We don't need it anymore for now. Let's look at the solution. So the warm-up exercise was, there are routes over here, and then we have to complete those routes. Okay? So what we'll do is, instead of writing it out, we'll go through, we'll do it together. I'll then show you the code, what each one is doing. So this is similar, and this is exactly the same operations, CRUD operations. Okay, Eric, do you remember CRUD? C-R-U-D, what it stands for?
Oh God, let's see. No.
Any, it doesn't matter. The order doesn't matter. If you
Well, isn't it read?
read, yep,
Let's see, and delete on the end.
yep, delete.
The U and the C for some reason. I know they had multiple meaning, but
Okay, so what's remaining from read and delete? Like
create.
create, yep. And the last one? Update.
Oh, update. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So all of these operations are in all database. So the same, Eric. So what about the first? If you look at this API over here, app.post submit. What does this tell you? If you had to take a guess, one of these operations, which operation would be the closest one? Create, read, update, delete. If you just had to take a guess, look at the first one, post.
I'm thinking that's going to be update.
Okay, what do you think is happening when I click submit? So I have a books. You see, remember this UI? This is my
Yeah,
UI.
you're adding it.
Adding it. Okay, so add would it be update or
No.
okay.
Create.
Create. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the post is, remember from HTTP post, it's
Yeah.
always an insertion. So
Mm-hmm.
you know, you're inserting something in your database. All right. So submit will tell you that you are creating. Okay. Now from Mongo perspective, do you remember the function? What Mongo would be using? Parser? Did somebody say parse? So we saw, anybody else remember?
Isn't it set?
Set, yeah. From the Mongo perspective, set. What was that?
Insert.
Insert. So they have like a kind of different functions, create, insert, or well, set is more like update,
Right.
right? So insert or create would be, or save would be more close to it. All right. So the one that the solution has the save, but if you guys remember from your Tuesday class, I think it was called insert. You can use the same one. The Mongo.js module, the node module over here, they kind of have different functions, but they kind of serve the same purpose. So if you remember, DB is your instantiating on the top, then books is your collection name, and then you're calling the save function. All right, exactly, almost same as MySQL is. All right, no changes over here. All right, any questions on this? So from the UI, I'm getting a JSON, which is book, and I'm then going ahead and creating a document in my Mongo. All right. On the top, you will see I'm creating all that connection. If you guys remember, you had saying DB URL and the collections. Okay. Now, what's the, if I do not have these in my created in my MongoD, is this going to work or not? If I do not have the database URL or the collection set up. No. On my MongoDB.
Okay, no, you have to have it set.
It will what?
You have to have it set. Well, not the collections.
Yeah, it won't work. I have to go and manually say create a database, warm up, and then create a collections, and then only this code is going to work. Right.
It doesn't work right now.
Collections
Right.
would work.
Huh?
Collection. When I was doing it last week, they did work. It just created a collection because I misspelled it.
Right.
It created a new collection, anyways.
Oh yeah, but you must have the warm up database or something.
Right. Yeah,
Do you
the
have it?
database existed, but then I misspelled the collection and we created. The
Right,
collection.
right. So the database still has to be there, right? And then you run this code and it will create a collection. And as Aaron is saying, if you misspell, it's will create a new collection. And we saw on Saturday, remember we were typing it in and I misspelled and actually created a new collection. Same with the database. If you are on the Mongo terminal and you say use and you misspell your database name, it will say, yeah, sure, go ahead and use it. It doesn't care.
Mhm.
Right? So keep that in mind when you move on to the next framework. All right. Let's see. David, what do you think? Next one, read /read app.get. What do you think is happening over here? App.get read.
Yeah,
Which of these functions do you think is happening?
read.
Do you see it?
What do you mean?
Yeah, this one, app.get read. Within the code, what do you think is which one of these operations is happening?
It's reading, right?
Right. Yep, it's reading. So when you do a /read, it's reading from the database. What about Mongo perspective? Which function do you think is being used? So we saw save, create, insert. Huh?
Insert or get? Is that what we're?
No, insert. Insert is inserting the database. You said it right. It's reading from the database.
Right.
Right. Now, what is the function name in Mongo that is performing the read operation? Anybody else remember?
Send? Send?
Send. No, reading from the database. Find. So it's usually one of the keywords. It's either going to be read, find all. If you remember from MySQLize, SQLize also, it's similar names. All right, it's usually bound to be one of those. So in this case, it's find. So what I'm doing is I'm calling the find function of MongoD and just reading all the data that is in Mongo and getting it through. Okay. Now, what is read true, David, again, doing over here? What do you think read true means? If you see it over here, read true.
It returns if there's something there.
Something there. It's kind of close. Maybe if I show you the collection. So this is how the data is. Oh, you can see. I don't know if it can get any bigger. Nope. Okay, let me do it. So the collection has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields. ID, title, author, created, and read. So it has a field called read. In my database, this is actually a field. So now with that information, what do you think is happening now?
It's pulling that column inside the database.
Exactly, yep. Column, or in MongoDB we say field because there is no column. So what it is doing is find is basically find all the rows, all the collection which has read true. Okay? Anything that has read false, it's going to ignore it. That's what /read is also doing. Okay? Awesome, excellent. Oh, you guys kind of getting a hang of it. So you see, the pattern is still similar. We saw SQLize, we saw MySQL. When you come to Node.js, all the frameworks are kind of similar. Even the function call is similar. It's options and then a callback function, same as SQLize. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay, now following the same pattern, what is unread? What about Michael? What do you think? So it's app.get, so it cannot be deleted because get is which operation over there? Update is closer, but look at this one. What did we do over here? So read was getting something from the database, right? What is unread doing? Yep. Yep, reading it again. But what's the difference between read and unread then? So in read, we said it is reading from the database all the collection where read is equal to true. What do you think is happening over here? It's reading from the database, you're right.
All the ones that marked.
That's not marked. Or it is set to false.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the only difference. So if you remember, if you go back to our UI, you see mark as read, mark as unread. That's what it is doing. It's a Boolean, and it finds only rows that have read is false and where read is equal to true. Okay? Let's see next one. Cody, you want to give a try? Mark, read, and ID.
Update.
Update, excellent. Yep, it is updating. You see app.get, you can use the app.put also over here, but remember I was saying you can use any one of those. Over here it's using get, but you're right, it's updating. Excellent. What is it updating?
It's changing the boolean of read.
Excellent. Yes, that is exactly what it is doing. So mark read, it is going and changing the variable read from false to true, basically. Okay, and if you guys remember from the Mongo perspective, once you get the concept, the next is just the syntax. So you can look it up and see how do you update in MongoDB. We saw save, we saw find, the next one is update. So you update it with this ID, and remember the dollar set which we saw on Saturday? That's what we were using to update collections in our MongoDB. Okay, so it is setting it to true. All right, any questions on this? Getting kind of hang of it? Okay. Let's see, George, you want to try this one? Mark.
The update.
Update, yes.
It's changing it from true to false on read.
Yep. Excellent. Yep. That is exactly what it is doing. So mark and read, same as the previous one. It's updating, taking that ID, and then setting it to false, basically. All right. Any questions on this? Okay. All right. So we saw some of the things we were discussing about MongoDB. You make a mistake and something happens and all that stuff. Now, what I would like you guys to do is Google Mongoose, and with your neighbor as a group, just try to find what Mongoose is and what it is bringing to the table that MongoDB is kind of, doesn't seem very usable.
So looks like that's right.
I like their explanation of the main page.
Google. So, which version do you like? Oh yeah. Okay. I see.
That way it can be the whole thing.
All kinds of environments.
Great one.
I'm looking at mongoose.
Oh.
The bike name also, yeah. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
This is like
That's the next version.
Alright guys, search mongoose JS.
Because we're fun.
Search mongoose JS. Man, I have to be careful what I tell you guys to Google.
If mongoose is singular, is mongoose plural? Yes, right?
Monkeys.
Monkeys. Try not to find the logic behind the name. Probably somebody, I don't know what they were having. They said, oh, mongoose.
Oh, so it's
So it's just
We're out of control. We're no longer like sort of version animals.
it's the order.
Yeah, and I found out that it has a library to know the
I'm guessing that one.
So do that already.
Really? Is that smart? Wow, that's pretty good.
What was that? What was the last one?
So when you do the singular and it pluralizes your,
Nice.
it has a library that will switch it to
Nice.
from goose
Yeah.
to geese.
Man, you already took my thunder. That was my point.
Oh.
That's good, yeah. Yeah. Very interesting point, yeah.
Whatever you did with that to make it work is fine. It's just having a committed concept.
Never did check SQLized to see if SQLized did that though.
It's kind of annoying at the same time, and also like a good thing. But there's they do have a way where you can stop that also. Yeah, I looked it up. Otherwise, I would be super annoyed. I was like, well, that's not what the name I want, but I can see why they did it. But then I was thinking, hey, if I have a collection named Party, right?
Yeah.
What would it do? If I have a party, it's just going to create.
Oh wow.
This would bother me. I was like, that's.
Well, SQLized does that. Is that what it did?
Oh no, mongoose does it.
yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
What were you? I thought that's what you were saying.
Well, no, from the video I was watching last night, they said that if you put in a singular word, it
Yeah.
has a library that tells you what the proper plural is.
Yes.
So it should switch that to like.
Oh, it does have it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. I thought it just added a S at the end. That's right.
Well, I
No,
named
does
that
have
same
it?
way.
It's really smarter.
It actually has a library which references to singular
Well, you don't have to
words.
make a conscious
Oh, for this one?
Yeah, so it should, if you put party, it should have back spelled IES
Oh.
instead of YS.
Yeah.
No, I was thinking against it changing what I told it to use.
Yeah.
But
I'm still kind of. We'll test it out right now and see if that works. If that is what it is, that's smart. Then I thought it was just adding a S at the end.
That's
For
what I thought was
everything.
SQLized too, that's why I asked the
Yeah.
mouse person, or maybe I asked that with the person.
Oh,
I
okay.
asked if it was, if you put in mouse, what mouse is.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, I was like, why are you?
We'll figure. The example we'll do. I'll change it to party and see what happens.
And I keep getting the gray screen. I think it's trying to tell me if there are. They are playing songs.
It has plenty like for auto population among other things. And it's schema based.
All right. So give me some points. What do you guys find out about mongoose?
So I was looking online and I came across a dude Stack Overflow that was talking about
Yeah, I got like
and I looked online and like over twice as fast as
It'll say no results.
at least by the amount of operations you can do.
Okay. But understand that beneath all the layers, it's still using MongoDB.
Yeah.
So Okay.
But it seems to be more efficient in
More
terms
Okay. So we saw some of the problems with MongoDB, right? You do a typo and you do all that stuff, kind of screws up everything. So Mongoose is, if you see, that's on their main page also, writing MongoDB validation, casting business logic. So they have, it's a layer on top of MongoDB. And they're kind of giving you kind of like a flavor of SQLize. You know, remember SQLize ORM? You could create your tables, columns, and all that stuff. Similarly, Mongoose does the same thing. So there's a less chance you will be mistyping and everything because you can put validations over here. You can put the names of the collections once they are there. If there's a typo or anything, it's going to give you an error saying it doesn't exist and all that stuff. Okay, so we'll see what validations is provide. But again, Mongoose is also a very popular framework. There are a lot of people dealing with MongoDB use. We saw RoboDB as a UI. Mongoose is kind of like the ORM layer for MongoDB. All right. Again, it's if you want to write pure vanilla MongoDB Node.js code, that's the framework. They also have MongoJS. That's the one you will use. Mongoose is another layer on top of that. All right. So some of the important features of Mongoose are, we'll look at these keywords, but they are very important if you're going to use that. It's very important to understand. They have something called schema. They have something called models. All right. So we'll start with those. So schema is, if you guys remember from MySQL, it's kind of like the outline of your collection of your database. In SQL terms, it's an outline of your table. That this is my table going to look like. It's going to have these many columns. This is the type of that column would be string, number, decimal, or whatever. All right, that's what the schema is. In same terms, that's exactly what the schema is in Mongoose also. You're going to define your fields. I hate to say columns over here, but if you understand, fields just kind of relates to columns in MySQL. So schema, you will define your fields and you will define the data types for it. Okay, I have a field called name and it's going to be string. Okay, you cannot do that in MongoDB from the code right now. Okay, you just say it and it will take a guess. But Mongoose kind of restricts you or kind of forces you to define all your data types. So you can have string, number, we'll see what are the available ones. They have quite a few. So in the schema, you're going to define how your collection is going to look like. Right? Model is what allows us to write queries to MongoDB. We'll see how that works. But if you remember from SQLize, you had a model and then you were making queries like create, insert, update, and all this stuff. That is exactly what model also does over here. Okay? Alright, if you guys understood SQLize properly, you guys used it, it's going to be like an easy transition into this also. At times you wouldn't really see if you are using MySQL or Mongo because this kind of adds a layer on top of it. It's kind of very similar. If you look at the code for MySQL or SQLize and then look at this, it would be hard to tell which one is using what. Okay, because that's how they have defined it. Right, again, so schema is your collection definition, or in MySQL terms, your table definition. All right. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to show you, I'm going to type it out a simple example, just the basic one, how to use it, and then we will look at this exercise and what we will do is we'll go through the code instead of me typing because there's a lot of code. I'm going to show you how it is done. But first I'll start with doing a simple example just from the documentation. From the quick start guide, we'll go through this and create a schema and a model and then insert something. Okay? All right, any questions? Okay, so all of this will be localhost. So I'm going to be connecting to my database, which is on my localhost. Again, to make sure this is working, MongoD, you have to start in your terminal, otherwise none of this is going to work. Okay, and if you see here, it says require mongoose. So of course there's the Node library. Go ahead and Google that library, Node.js, or let me show you the package.json. It's called mongoose. Okay. I think they're on 5. A bit higher, yeah, 5.3 or something. Okay, yeah. So we'll be using the latest one anyway, because this will, if you remember the caret sign, is going to pull the latest one. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, in this folder, I already have my Node modules installed, so I don't have to worry about. I already have mongoose over here. We'll come back to these once we do the simple one. So I'm going to start with call it server underscore simple. Okay. And simple doesn't mean that you know, the example that I'm going to show later is like more difficult. It's more organized, and that's what, you know, once you have your code, once you understand, that's when you refactor your code, that's how it should be looking like later on, the example that I will show you. We'll have separate files and our models. If you guys remember from SQLize, we had a separate files and a folder for our models, and that's what we are going to do later on. Okay, but for now, all we have to do is, it says install this, so run your npm install. It should install if you're on that folder. Otherwise, do npm install mongoose. Okay, and similar to all Node.js, we just have to use the require keyword, and that should be good. Okay, so I will say require mongoose require. Okay, and then it says we just have to do a connect to our localhost. Oops. So I'm going to do mongoose dot see this method connect. I'm going to get my, just going to go ahead and copy this from the example they have. Okay, you can give it any name. I want to try something, so that's why I'm giving this name, Superhero Party. Okay, so this is how I will go ahead and create my connection. Okay, simple. In this case, mongoose is kind of smart enough. If it does not exist, it's going to go ahead and create the database. Not going to give you any error. So that's kind of nice. So right now I don't have this one. So when I run this, it's going to go ahead and, if it doesn't exist, it's going to create it and kind of make it easy for me. All right, so I don't have to worry about going ahead and creating it manually. There are some extra parameters, and we'll come back and see. So the first thing it says we have to do is we have to define a schema. Right, they have a schema over here. That's what we are going to do. So let's go ahead and define our schema. It says let me call it hero schema. Okay, and then it says it's kind of like a constructor, so I have to do new mongoose.schema. So I'll do new mongoose.schema. Okay, okay, so in my schema, this is the schema that I'm defining, and these are the fields that I would want in my collection. All right, so I'm going to create a field called let's say name. Okay, and then you specify the data type. So I'm going to use string. Okay, oh, actually I'm missing something. Sorry. So your schema is going to be an object because everything is in the document is a JSON, right? It's basically a JavaScript object. So schema constructor function open. I'm putting this in new lines. You can put everything in the same line so that it's more easy, is more readable. All right. So in this one, I'm going to define a name field, and the data type for this is going to be string. And this is the minimum requirement, and you have a schema with one field, name, data type, string. And that's it. This should be good. All right. Another way to write the same thing is, let's suppose I have another field called age. All right, and this is going to be an integer or a number. So let's go to the documentation. I want to show you guys. If you go to schemas, right, kind of tells you details, and these are all the schemas that are allowed: string, number, date, buffer, boolean, mixed, object ID, and all this stuff. Okay, there's a good example over here too. So you see title, string, we have name, string, and this. A different way to write the same thing, and I would suggest you start with the same habit, and we'll see why it is. Instead of just putting the just the data type, what you do is you say age, so age is now an object, and then you say type. What is the data type for this? Let me put number. Okay, this is kind of same as maybe this one, date, but the type over here is number. Okay, so get in the habit of declaring this in this way. And why? We'll see that type is one option. There are a lot more options that you can put. Let's see, is it here, or might be in the schema types. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So if I go to schema types, all right, so this is what we are on. We declared something number. If you see, right now I'm using type. Let's see where type is. Should be, let me find this. Type. I was trying to see if it finds me the exact one. Okay, maybe they didn't mention because it's already here. Okay, so similar to type, you have all these options over here, and this is where the power of Mongoose reside. You see this required, default, select. If you want to use all of these, you're going to put it over here. So if I could do required, true, you know, so this will add validation to your schema. If you pass in if you do not pass in an age, it's going to give you an error saying age is required or some other message. Okay, so that's why I'm saying start with this syntax so that you can add a lot of stuff. So other options are validate. We'll see what the validator function does. These are nice one. Lowercase, uppercase kind of converts it. So that's kind of useful if you want everything in your collection to be uppercase. Trim, remove the white spaces. Minimum length, max length. All right. So all these options are there. They're good ones. It kind of helps you when you define your fields. Okay. So that's why, you know, start with this one. Kind of this syntax so that you don't have to worry about changing your code. Just keep adding all the options over here. Right? In the simplest case, this is how you do it. All right? All right, so at this point, I have my schema created. And this ends over here. Okay? So the second part is now my schema is created. I have my database connected on the top. I have to create my model. Okay, I have to run the queries now. So for running the queries, I need my model. Let's go back here. You will see models. Okay, and this is how you create a model. Okay, so similar to your schema, you're going to create, say, I'm going to create call this model hero. Okay, and then all you have to do is say mongoose dot model dot model have it right, mongoose dot model. Okay, yeah, mongoose dot model, and then you have to give some options over here. Okay, the first one is going to be your model name. So over here, okay, let me do this. I want to try something, so that's why I'm going to call this model, let's say, party, and then I'm going to call my model party over here. Okay. Looking at this one, you will probably call it hero and a hero. That's the collection name that's going to be. But I want to show you guys something, so I'm going to call it party. So this is a party where superheroes are coming. Okay. And then the second parameter is your schema. You have to pass in the schema that you have created earlier. Okay. And this is how your model will know what your schema is, what your collection is, and what it has to query. Okay. Any questions so far? Two things important. Schema. First, do the connection. Then you have to create a schema. Then you have to create a model. Schema defines your structure. If you see over here, you're defining your collection structure. My collection now has a name and an age. Okay. And your model is being used to query that schema, and we'll see how to do it. But those are the two absolute necessary things before you can start using Mongoose.
So your collection name is party?
My collection name is not party, my model name is party. We'll see what my collection name is. I don't have a collection defined yet. We'll see what happens. But my model name is party. What is my database name? Superhero Party database. That's my database name. Right now, I do not have a collection yet. Okay. So we'll say my model name is party. All right. So what did I say? That you can use your models to query. So I can do create, read, update, delete, and all that stuff. Let's look at what are the queries that are available to us. So all of these are here, similar. Find by ID, update, all of these are there. So we'll pick one. I'll start with the create one. Yeah, they have all the options. So what I'm trying to find is create. So this is the one we'll start with. So all of these are, again, you go to API, create, click model because all my queries are going to be tied to my model, right? So inside they have all these functions. So what they're saying is you have to put your model name and then call create. So this is the one we'll start with. The syntax is, again, similar to what we saw MongoDB, SQLize. You say your model name dot create options and then a callback function. Same. There's no difference over here. Okay, so I'm going to say party, and then I'm going to use the create function. Okay. So in this case, you can use the callback function as a second parameters, or the other option is use the then function. Both options are here. I'll use then, so that is kind of clear for you guys to see what's going inside the create. Okay, and the second one that I want to use is .catch. Okay, any idea what catch does? What is that? Exactly. Yep. So the catch function, what it does is there's any error performing this function is going to catch it over here and then output it. Okay. Well, right now it doesn't do anything, so I'm going to pass in my callback function and then do it. Okay. So just so that we can read this properly, I'm going to put these in neo lines, so that because these are going to get a little bit bigger. So I'm going to format my documents. It kind of looks nicer. Okay, let's start with this one because this is the easiest one. Doesn't take a lot, so I'm going to pass my callback function. It's going to return, it's going to have an error. If there's an error, just to log it out. Okay. Again, same thing. This should be recognizable by now because we have been using this in SQLize, Mongo. No changes over here. Okay. My then function. What does my then function do? What does my then function has? Success. When there is success and something comes back, my then function will be fired. All right. Again, same as the previous one. So same thing. Callback function has something. I'll put it data. All right, and then log that data. Okay. So till now, it is very similar to what we have seen in MySQLize, Mongo. There's no change. These two functions are same. This is what is going to change. So in my create function, I have to pass in the data. All right. I have to pass in what I'm trying to create, what I want to go in my database. All right. So it's going to be Mongo is all JSON or BSON. We saw that. So it's going to be a JavaScript object, of course. All right. So I create an object over here. And then I pass in, what do I pass in over here? What does my schema looks like? Name and age, and that's what I need to pass in. Okay, so all I have to do is I'll say name, say, okay, and then I have to pass in age. Okay, when I run this code, it will go and create a database. It's going to create a collection, and then it's going to insert this into my collection, right? Please note, I have not created a collection over here in my code, and let's see what happens when you run this code. And this is all, there shouldn't be anything else. This is the basic minimum code that will get you running Mongoose, and it will create what you're looking for. Right, let's see what happens. Just to see, this is my current database. I don't have superhero database, so when I run this, it should create one. Go back. Okay, this is 14. Okay. And a file called simple.js. Okay. So I run this, starts, comes back. We'll see what this error, what this warning is. We'll take a look at later. Right now, if you see, it outputs something. So if you see this means it was successful. It created something in my MongoDB. So I'll go ahead here, refresh. You see this superhero party database, right? Created, wasn't there. Let's open this up. Oh, it works. Yeah. So you see this collection over here? It's called parties.
Spelled correctly.
Spelled correctly. So it does work. And it has my data over here. All right. Now, I never created parties collection in my code. Minimize this. But what I did create was a model called party. All right. So Mongoose is kind of smart enough. What it does is it follows some standards. It will take your model, make it lowercase, and make it plural, and it will create a collection. Okay? If you had a model called hero, it will make it heroes. If you have a collection called parties, kind of goes. And George was mentioning they have a database or something where it kind of looks up and sees what's the correct plural of that word, and it will do it.
Wow. That's what I'm told.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. What was that? Question? Okay. Now this would kind of bother me because I'm like, well, I don't want that to be my collection name. But the good part is that they do allow, they tell you that you can specify the collection name. But if you do not, if this is, but this is the minimum code that you require to get it running, it'll be good. Okay. Before I go and show you some other, well, not unnecessary, but some other features, any questions on this? And I understand how mongoose work, similar to what we have been looking at. All right. Similar, if you had a find method, you would just put find over here, empty, it will get you all your rows back. We'll look at the other example, but this is the minimum code. Okay. Now, two things I want to quickly show you. You see over here, this deprecation warning. It says current URL string parser is deprecated and will be removed in future version. To use the new parser pass option, blah blah blah. Okay. Now I don't understand what it says, but I see this warning. I'm like, okay, I might as well do it. And they're also kind of nice enough to tell me that, you know, just copy the, pass this. So what I would do is I'm going to just go ahead. It says pass this in the connect method. Okay, so I'll come over here, and all I have to do is paste this, and my warning is gone. Okay, that's what it was saying. So URL, they gave me an error. Copy this. Again, you don't have to worry about what it says. It was just a warning anyway. You can ignore it. But they are saying that in the newer versions, it's going to go away, or it might break your code. So just use new URL parser true. Just do that. Okay, so that takes the warning away. All right. So I'm going to stop this because I don't want this to be running, and I'm going to go ahead and delete my database so that I can run. Okay, so what we saw here was, if you do this, it will create a collection with lowercase and a plural, whatever you're given, and the collection names, the collection should be plural, and that's kind of like the, again, MongoDB doesn't stop here, but that's kind of the standard. So follow the same rule. But let's suppose I want to call this collection superhero party. Okay, what I have to do is, and this you can find in, let's see, was it in schema? Where did I find it? Okay, yeah, this thing. Again, if you go to your schemas, I think they have mentioned pretty clearly in the documentation that they are going to is it over here, or was it in the basic example? Might be in the quick start. Let's see. Let me just show you guys. Where did I find them? Schemas. Title. Oh, it should be in the models actually. Yeah. Okay, when you go into models, because this is the code we are creating, what did I said that it takes your model name, lowercase and plural. So if you go into the documentation, that's exactly the first paragraph they had mentioned. This is what it does, right? Unfortunately, they don't mention how to fix that over here. You have to, I googled it, kind of have to dig through it. But if you go into your model and then oh no, sorry, this one, the guides. Oh, I just found it. Where did it go? Oh, sorry, schemas, and then there's an option called collection. And if you pass in, if you see over here, kind of small, but you can pass in the collection and a name, and that's what the collection will be called. Okay. So what you have, all you have to do is in your schema over here, you say collection, and then you pass in a name. Let's suppose this is what I want to call. Okay, so this way it's going to create this schema with this name. Let's go ahead and run this real quickly and refresh. And there it is, my collection. So just in case if you want to change the name, this is how you do it. Again, they have a lot more options over here other than collection. If you're doing a project in this, so you might want to go and read and find out what all it does, but they have a lot more options over here. Okay, these two are just the extra thing. I don't have to do any of these. It should still get you running. Okay, all right, any questions on this? Okay, so now I'm going to show you the refactored code that is there, but if you understand this, the next one should be kind of hopefully easier to understand. All right, so I'm going to start with this one. So what you will see in the examples, and it's again a good practice to kind of follow the same method. We saw in Sequelize, you create your models folder separate and you do everything. Do the same thing over here. Create your schema and models in a separate JS file, and this is the same way. So over here, if you see, we created a schema. I did the same thing. Create a schema, and then this schema, let me minimize this. What does the schema has? It has all the field definition and everything. All right. So you're going to do the same thing over here. Let me expand this. Over here, the schema has string, number. That's what the field is called. Email, date, long string. All of these are in this schema. Okay. The next thing, we have to create a model. That's what this line number 59 is doing. I'm creating a model, same. And then doing an export so that this can be used somewhere else. All right. Always try to follow the same strategy. Keep it separate so that your models are not together. All right. The next exercise that we'll see, all the models will be in a separate file. But basically, it's the same code that I showed you earlier. Okay, you just took the same code, put it in a different file, and then you're exporting it. How do we use this? It's going to be in your server.js. All right. Require. Same as previous one, you're taking your models. Line number 8, you're making that connection, exact same thing that we did earlier. And then same thing, calling the create function, passing in the data. And what we did, data is going to be your JavaScript object. Okay, so it just separated out. It's same thing, variable with data inside it. You pass it in, it will work, creates it, and all that stuff. Okay, so you see my code. The thing is, this is a good method to follow because your models will get huge. They're going to be bigger. Right now I just had 2, so it's fine. But if they are huge and they're going to be multiple, you won't have just one model. You're going to have like 2, 3, 4, 5. You guys did project 2, you should kind of have an idea how your SQL tables look like. It wasn't one, it was more than one. So this is the same way. Once you start putting everything in one file, it's going to get crowded pretty fast. So that's why I create your models in a separate file and do a require, get those models. But creating the schema is the same, creating the models, and then calling the create function. Create, find all, everything else. Okay? Any questions? All right, so let's go ahead and you guys take a look at the next one. Make sure you guys understand. So go ahead and discuss with your neighbor and then start the coding part for this one. It's almost the same as this one. And this example is already there on your GitLab. Take a look at this one. In this one, what is being asked is you just fill out the user model over here. Okay, so user model, I think you have to add 4 fields, add those 4 fields, and then run this. It should come up with a the HTML is already there, so don't worry about it. But when you run this, it should come up with a web page. All right, let's see what it looks like. This is number 15. Oops. Okay, this is how it should come up. Let's see if we have some. Okay. We should be able to create some usernames, password, email, and if everything is working, it should come up with it should show you some JSON what it is coming back as. All right. It should also go ahead and create a database and a collection. So this is userdb. Okay, so this is how it should be working. Once you have the user model successfully written down. All right, take a look at it, see how this will work, and then I will show you the solution. I will go to it. Okay. I think for email there should be, let me see, this was, okay, they have something for email in the example model. Can take a look at it and see how this is. It's going to be, I think it's going to be the same thing. Oh, they already have that into it.
Yes. That's the password.
All right. Any questions on the solution? Similar to the example, this is how the solution also looks like. They're saying the username should be type string, trim, removes the white spaces, and it's a required field. So give it a try, and then if you don't put in a username, it's going to give you error saying the username doesn't is required. Okay, I stopped it. Let's see. So in this example, if I go back and I don't give any username and submit, you'll see it gives an error. Username is required, and this is coming because of this required field over here. Okay. So I was telling you, right, there are quite a number of options you can use. Password, same for password over here. They have a validate function if you want to check if it's they're calling anonymous function where it checks and just returns you if the length is greater than or less than is not greater than 6. Okay. Email, similar to the example one. If you see unique, try to once you have an email address that is in your database, it won't let you insert the same one. If you go ahead and try it, it will give you an error that the email already exists. And the last one is the date. You're not passing it in. It's automatically, if you see this default, if you don't use this one, it's going to default to a current date and going to insert into your MongoDB database. Okay. Any questions on this one? we'll take a 15-minute break. We'll come back at 8, and we'll see two more concepts, and they're kind of a little bit confusing, a little bit more difficult. So we'll take a look at those. Try to see what other options this mongoose has. All right. So we'll come back at 8. We'll start the next one.
Yeah, still stiff.
We're making like a secure login system. Oh yeah, today's Thursday.
Yeah. Me neither. Now it's your track. At all.
Signing process for it redirects. Well, as soon as you enter it in, so you have to use your AT&T credentials now instead of your email. But it redirects to 5 different pages. You log in with AT&T and it redirects to the
Crazy. Crazy.
Restart it, so restart it. Oh yeah. Say.
I'm waiting. It's soon now or soon later?
Probably later. Probably pretty early.
I think you're
Yeah, it's just the code family stuff.
That's good.
It's like the
Huh?
so like it's not there yet.
By the way,
No,
it's just boring. I didn't know that. So just get into it.
So here's the thing, and why
Did you submit?
yours isn't
Yeah, did you see my message?
I don't even have a fine.
HTML.
Okay. Well, yeah, when he comes back, just have him send it to you. That way I can give you a grade.
So for example, put it like an
Unless you don't
HTML
want
link
it.
to the section on the page because it has
Unless you don't
different
want it,
HTML
I don't know.
body
I'm
set,
open
you know?
tomorrow.
And then so
Tomorrow?
with handle bars, you can't do that. You have to include them all in the mail, and then
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that way it breaks the, if you want to style different pages differently, it's not
Probably an hour.
Yeah, finish her up.
it works.
Lazy. Not lazy, busy.
Are we in break right now?
So does Mia have it submitted either? Does Mia have it submitted?
One
I literally
site
media
has a
does.
common.
Everyone but me.
Here, hold on. I'll just send them to you.
The whole
And then,
thing, basically.
You can, or you could use it, you have the source file, you can take it to the logo.
You have the link already then?
Yeah,
Oh,
so let me just grab it and send it to you, and then you just submit.
you bet.
And then it opens up parts like that. It's basically the same CSS on every page.
You can add and change some of the classes. There you go. Forget that they work. Who's playing? Was it Jackson Titans? I totally forgot.
But these,
files. Good. We're pretty much done. Just got one more group left. No. Yeah. Turned out pretty good. Yeah.
They were better.
Yeah. Everybody hit the requirements. Absolutely.
Better about project 3 now.
Much better. Yeah. Higher standard project. For
Yeah.
What's that?
It was just
Much better than
conversation.
Oh yeah, the higher standard.
I heard everyone hit the requirements.
The good
Huh?
thing
I
is
said I heard
What?
everyone hit the
every
requirements.
single
Yeah.
something submitted
That's
and
good.
working.
Yeah.
project.
Well,
In our class, there
I
was
guess
like
from the people learned from the first one.
and you would get, like,
They were
had
still
the,
lenient about it, but I know from the
they
previous
could
cohort,
submit, like,
if you miss a requirement, they were like
they had to do,
like from
local.
A plus to A, or it will go from A to A minus, or B. They will like chunk the whole point out.
That sounds pretty standard.
Yeah.
Well, they like
So.
get it to work, so yeah.
But project 2 will be exciting. The React and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah.
So
I looked at something on React and it's
doing away with these new models.
Just going away with the new model?
Yeah.
Really?
It does away with it. Everything kind of goes into one file and components.
Right.
Is that what you mean?
That's the basis of React. So they're
Yeah.
going away with it.
No. I'm asking like that's what.
Oh yeah,
React
that's the
does,
basis.
Like, React gets away from the whole view model controller concept.
Well, they go with the components, as you were saying. Everything is like kind of.
Yeah, I'll look it over once more.
Like everything is divided into like many components. They do kind of go well, not from the terminology. If you look at Angular, they're like very view controller focused. That they give it their
I always like validation.
not the class names, the file names or whatever they use. They have to put a controller, even the tags that they have like controller and all. In them, React doesn't have that, but I still think they still kind of follow the view controller model, but they advertise themselves as more like components. Components, states.
To me,
I think they have
that's
something called props. That's what they kind of advertise. Vue, yeah.
It's like in between.
Yeah.
It's not as strict as Angular. It's not fucking crazy like React.
Right. Vue is the one that's the next popular one. But again, these giant frameworks, they kind of take the lamplight and kind of put it on. But Vue, I haven't used it. I've looked at it, but I've heard that it's actually better.
So easy. Like,
Right. But unfortunately, not a lot of people use it. Well, not a lot of companies. They kind of, no, just stick to React.
It costs money to learn something. Yeah. No, that's fine.
There's a learning curve to everything.
Yeah, fully functional. It's crazy.
Honestly, I mean, it's cool to have.
Here at the area, so usually it would be like either someone would use a different CSS framework or like one animation somewhere, and then they were already. To me, that's not really important. We went over my head. I think it's teaching this class. How did I get into teaching this class?
How did I get into teaching this class?
I see.
Actually, it's funny. LinkedIn. Somebody actually from there kind of approached me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they said, are you interested? I said, okay, then they did the interview process. I had to go through like a mock teaching class session or something.
Prices they'll say like $200, like almost.
And then finally,
month they'll be one week.
and they had to submit they did a video. They recorded the video. They had to submit it to a university, and somebody had to review and accept it and all that stuff. So interesting, yeah. Somebody actually, I didn't actually pursue it. Somebody actually from LinkedIn reached out.
So I know, because I mean that's like an easy investment, $10 for sure.
LinkedIn has been very powerful.
Well, there's one
like few years.
Has almost every lesson we've had.
Oh, it's a video.
I still get like a lot of recruiters reaching out. So when I was in Vancouver, it's like a small town, not a lot of companies over there. So I really used to get anybody reaching out saying, hey, there's a job opportunity. As soon as I changed my location to Phoenix, Arizona, there are a lot more companies of course. I keep getting recruiters saying, hey, are you interested? Are you this? American Express is hiring a lot of people.
And then there's always bad news in the back office.
Oh, there is? What's the background?
Well, just because everything they do is so. So from what I've heard, I've met a lot of people coming out of it.
Okay.
And they always say everything is so tight knit into American Express that it's not applicable anywhere else outside in American Express. So it's like you go somewhere, it's like, oh, that's great. What's next? So it's like a lot of people. It's like not being. It's not as good on the resume coming from American Express. And they're always, it's not like a security. They're always hiring. Always
Well, not even turnovers, like fighting
they just said, okay, we're just going to cut all of these people, and we're going to make this entire batch and create all these jobs. So you get fired, but then you would end up reapplying, trying to get back to the new direction you're taking. So it's constantly firing.
That's why they're like keep hiring every few months.
It looks so hard.
Does it automatically?
Yes. It's so simple.
Oh, and this is from Google Chrome.
Yeah, so it automatically just detects that it's a password.
Yeah. That's a new feature
Looks
there.
good
Yeah.
on a super big monitor too.
Yeah. Thank Google for that.
Ordered it yet, but I put my Amazon card.
Yeah.
This thing, I feel like it'll take them this much straight.
Yeah, ultra wide are pretty cool. I like it a lot. Oh yeah, Will was saying that's really nice that web development, everyone's like, people aren't protective of things.
But keeping using this as a second monitor a lot,
People, they like teach.
nothing makes up for
Yeah.
not having to need a second monitor.
Anyway, I was saying like, oh yeah, it's how many ports like protective. I'm gonna make a calculator app. I'm gonna like trademark that.
Oh, Axios did it?
No one's gonna know how to do addition and division on the same one, right? But like this, the everyone knows how to do it. Me when I came to the class, I had no idea. It's weird. Like it doesn't even make sense because like I know how to use calculator, but programming in JavaScript, that class blew my mind when we made that class. Like why is it so? Yeah. But that's all we're saying.
I had lunch. I take lunch at
Royce,
like 10:45.
So
It was
that's like that.
a lot of times all I've had by then was 9 cups of coffee.
There you go.
Yeah. I will leave lunch today.
It's true.
I don't even know. It's in my normal cycle, but I got there like 10 p.m.
You're looking at me. No, keep insulting him. I was enjoying that.
Yeah.
Oh man, like scooting over, you notice you kept like inching away.
I think body languages that share the body.
I love it.
Just go.
Well, they share so much when they're little.
Yeah, it's spring. Do you want to message first when you were here, or?
I already harassed my TAs and I was like,
Oh,
I'm here.
yeah.
I took a picture showing proof of life of you in the corner.
Oh, you did that, okay. Was that a parcel?
I'll pull it up and slide right now.
So usually it messages me asking if the person who's switching is there or not, so that's why.
Yeah. Oh, Carson. Oh, Carson. Yeah, there. Yeah. I didn't send it to Carson because he's a jerk.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I usually get a message from me asking, hey, is this guy showed up or this person showed up in your class?
Be like, where's that douchebag Garrett?
I always figured like the level of.
You mean the peanut gallery where all the comments came from?
Saturday guy? So like for me, I have found this great portfolio. I mean, it looks so pretty because I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, oh.
Right, is everybody here now?
My whole portfolio right here. Dude.
But see, that's all you need. See, I need the flash. I need the lights. Nobody right?
Kevin Davis, I know we've heard you. You, of course. There's probably 200 people in this class that have the same
Mix that, like, you know, American first name, you get yourself a Kevin Davis.
Kevin, you guys are, I have one resource. My CDs. The only thing that has strong.
Mine's just rich. Is that it's so rich?
If it ain't broke, why fix it?
Well, he doesn't want to help you, you know? He's got the confidence. He said, look, picture me looking good. That's all you need. That's what you need.
The only thing that this has actually does as well, and looks really decent I'm totally serious. It's just like, dude, that's the idea was like, I think it was like 1,000.
Why? We probably don't know.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so there are two more things we are going to look at from Mongoose perspective. Those are a little bit more complicated. But those are the two. Those are some of the properties where Mongoose really excels. Kind of provides you the flexibility. The first we are going to look at is called custom methods. Okay, and second, populate. We'll talk about the second one in a bit. Right. So custom methods. So what it means is you can add functions to your schemas. All right. Before we add any custom methods to our schemas, if you look at the documentation, you see this line where it says var silence is equal to new kitten. What this is just another way to put your data in. So after I have declared I'm going back to my simple example. What I can do is I can do this. I can say let, I'll call it hero is equal to new, and then my model name, which is party. Okay, again going back to the example over here, it says new kitten, and kitten over here is your model, and then you pass in the data that we have. Okay, so this thing over here, this data, I'm just going to copy this, going to put it over here instead. Okay, and instead of passing this, I can pass in my hero object that I just created. So it's okay, let me go back and make sure this is, so this was, keep forgetting, this is 14. Let's go back to our database to make sure. Come on. And my second hero is there. So let me stop this and see. Okay, so this is the other way you can pass in data. So what I did was I created an object. You guys remember the new keyword from the constructor class? I know a lot of you guys didn't do that assignment. All right, but this is from the constructor thing. Yeah, I'm calling my constructor. I'm creating an object, and my constructor I'm passing in the same data that I had over here. Okay, and this is of type this model. This one, this and this are the same part. Okay, so this is another way you can pass in your data. All right, any questions on this? So the reason I changed this because this kind of ties in to the next topic, which is the methods. Let's see. So in your schemas, when you define your schema, what you can also do is you can also add custom methods to your schema. Okay, what do I mean by this? Let's suppose hero schema dot, you'll see keyword here methods dot, and then you can specify a method. Method is same as function. So what you can do is you can tie functions to your schema. All right, right now we have seen we have fields that are tied to your schema. You can also tie functions to your schemas. All right, let's suppose I want to add something to the name. Add best string. Okay, let's suppose I have this function. What it would do is it would take the name, anything that you pass in, is going to add something else to it. It will just add a keyword saying is the best. Okay, so I define my function. Okay, and this is how I define your function. Again, schema, you have defined your schema. After a schema, you say schema name, which is coming from here. Methods, this is the keyword. You have to put in methods. And this thing is whatever function name you want to give. Okay, if you guys remember, this is kind of same as function definition. This is like the second way you can define your function. So that's what I'm using over here. And let's suppose I want to add something to the name field. So how do I access my fields that are part of my schema? I'm going to use the keyword this dot name, and let's suppose what I want to do is I want to add something to this name and say is the best. Okay, and then you have to return this new string that is updated. Okay, again, what am I doing? I created a function, and in this function what I'm saying is take this field and add something to it. Okay, and then return this. The effect of this is anything that comes in, any data that I pass in, let's suppose I pass in Iron Man, is going to take this name, it's going to add this string to it, and that's what is going to go and save in my database. Okay, let's see how this works. So again, I have defined it. I still haven't called this function. All right, so I have the definition. I have to call this function to make sure this works. So this is going to be, oops, where's my mouse? I have my schema. Again, you want to do this before, because once you create your model, your schema is going to be tied to this schema. So you have to define, this is still, you are defining you're kind of setting up your schema. So after you have defined your model, you want to call this method. So I have my object called hero. So I'm going to say hero dot, and you see this function shows up, add best string. Okay. All right. So what is happening is I defined my schema, then I added a custom method to it. All right. And then I created my model, and then I went ahead and then I called this function. What this does is going to call this, is going to update my name. So right now my name is this. Let me add a new one. Okay. So it's going to call this. This is my string. Right now, this is all my data is. All right. As soon as I call this method, it's going to go ahead, take this field, add something to it, and now my new data has name dot 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 is the best. All right. Now if let's go ahead and run this and see what our database now has. Oh yeah. So you see, what it did was it updated this field. View documents. This time it updated it. Okay. So this is where the let me stop this. So one of the features where the real power of Mongoose lies is it lets you kind of butt in, kind of come in between, and kind of modify your data that is coming to you. Okay. Right now it's a simple, but let's suppose you want to add something. You are taking 2 inputs from the user, but the user doesn't have to know, but in your database you are adding 2 fields and you're saving it, so you can write a method that comes in between. Before your creation happens, your function that is kind of like the middleware is going to get called, do some calculation, and then save it to your database. All right. Any questions on this? And then I'll show you one more example. Question? All right. So this was the simple one. Let's see what we have over here. It's kind of similar one from the user schema. So you already saw the user schema, you defined it, and then I said before you create the model, you have to create these methods. All right, and the reason is because once you create a model, you see it's taking the schema, right? So whatever you have created before is going to take this and then create a model out of it. So you want to always create your methods before it. Over here, what the method is doing is taking the username and adding some string to it. And also it is taking this field, which is a Boolean one, and puts it as true. All right. If you look at this user schema over here, it has username, password, the same exercise you did, email, and then it has this field. But if you look at the screen, there was no property or no label, anything that said is cool. All right, so your user doesn't even know this field exists. In your case, you know what it does and it exists, so that's why it goes ahead and updates it, and you will see in your database. Right? So again, what this tells us is that you don't have to expose everything to the user. There might be some fields that you don't want the user to see, but you want it to be updated in your database, and this is how you do it. So these function or these method kind of lie in between the creation part and then inserting into your database. So your data will come, and if there are any middleware operations that you want to perform on that, you use these methods, make those changes, and then push it to your database. Right? What happens, your front end or the user doesn't even know what happened. In the middleware, it comes in, modifies some data according to what you are thinking, and then goes ahead and puts that in your database. Okay. One more time, your methods are part of your schema. So once you define your schema fields, if you have any methods, that's how you do it. You will put your schema name, which is same as this one, methods, the keyword, and then whatever function you want to call it. This is custom method, whatever you want to call that function. Okay. How do you access the fields that are part of your schema? Use the keyword this. All right. This dot whatever the fields are. All right. Remember from the JavaScript previous objects, this is how you access those objects. So that's the same concept over here. You're accessing fields that are, if you look at it, these are objects, right? Curly brackets, object. So that's how you access them. Okay. Before I finish, let's go ahead and look at the server.js. User, again, if you are using your custom methods, this is the way to go about it. So you use the constructor, and your user is your schema. You're passing it. Remember the simple, sorry, the model. So if you remember my simple example, which was this one, this part over here. So I'm creating an object of my model, and then I'm passing my data again. So you do the same thing. You create an object of your model. So at this point, if I run this code, you will see that at this point, user will have your username, password, whatever the UI is sending. Okay? There has no modification being done at this point. All right? Modification will be done once you call these functions. All right? Let me run this so that this is number 16. Okay, go ahead and run this code. All right, so if you see my log statement, before the functions are called, you see my username, password, email address. So the username is whatever I typed in over here. Okay, so this is the code that is this one. Okay, once I call these method, it will go ahead and update my user object, and that's why you see the next line you will see the coolest added to it. Okay, so it won't work until you call those functions. Okay, so what you have to do is, again, once you create the object, call those functions, and then your data will be updated before you post it in your database. Okay? Again, this is useful when you have something, you want to make some calculations. Let's suppose you're getting first name and last name in two different fields. On your database side, you want to connect both of those and save it as first name, last name together. You can do it over here. You want to make some additions, some calculations, few more things, you can be done. Some other fields you might have not visible to the user, but you want to make sure that they are saved in your database. Just like the Boolean that we saw, you can create a function that will run before inserting in your database. Okay, this is one of the really powerful tools of Mongoose. Kind of lets you manipulate the data before it inserts it. All right. All right. Any questions on this? Yes.
So you're writing a function that attaches only to the user collection.
Correct.
Is there a function you can attach to the whole schema, so that way if you have a function that gets repeated on every single one, you're not having to attach it to every single one?
So this is, technically this is attaching to your model, and your model is attached to a schema. So it is going to update for every single one.
Right. Is there a way to make that more global? Just call a function for.
He's talking about multiple schemas.
Yeah.
To have one function on multiple schemas.
Oh no, yeah, you have to put it separate for each schema, because these functions are tied to one schema. Yeah, if you look back to um, this one. So you have to specify the schema name and then a method. So if there is another one, then you have to say that schema dot method. So each custom method is kind of tied to that. Yeah. Okay, so method is tied to schema, and then your this object is your model. This thing over. Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. So go ahead and let's try look at the next exercise, which is very similar. Let's see what they are asking. Oh, there's no. Oh, this one. So go to user model and update the custom methods. And then you're going to use that in your server.js. So let's see. So you already have your schema created. You just have to add two methods. One set full name last updated date, which is going to set the property to using date.now. Set full name is taking two strings which exist over here. Full name, sorry. Okay, last name and first name, you're going to combine both of these and save it in your full name field. Okay, that's what this method will do. I don't think there's anything to update over here. Yeah, you have to call this function. Okay, so in your post, you're going to create new object for the model, call those two functions, and then submit it. This is exercise number 17, yes. So the solution is very similar to the previous example that we looked at it. Just put it up there. Just can see how can I get a hint out of it. And this one has the methods from the previous exercise. It's going to be very similar to this one. Are we adding the methods to the to the schema? You're going to add it to the schema. So I'm giving the which line is it? User schema.
Yeah.
Oh, well, so this is your calling. You don't call it in your. You attach it to it, but you see the calling part is in your server.js. In model, you just create and attach it, and you just leave it. So all model just has a definition. Yeah, you're going to call it somewhere else where you're going to call it over here, and you have to create an object of the model and then call this. Yeah. All right, guys, let's do a quick review of this exercise, and then we'll move on to the last feature of Mongoose, and then we have one more exercise after that. Okay, so in this exercise, similar to the previous one, we are creating two methods. Methods are going to be attached to the schema. All right, so you create a schema over here. It has all the properties, fields, and everything. And then we had to create two methods: full name, set full name, and last update. And this is going to be in your user model.js. All right, whenever you are defining your schemas, that's where you do it. Right? Again, this is the definition of the function. I'm not calling them over here yet. So I create my two methods. Set full name is taking the first name, last name, combining them, and putting into the field full name. Okay? Any questions on this part? All right, very similar to the previous one. All right. The second method, what it is saying is that you update the last updated date. There's a field over there, and you update that. Now, if you look at your UI, you do not have this field last updated date. Again, from the database perspective, created date and last updated date are kind of like important fields, and a lot of databases kind of by default have them. This kind of helps us trace the records and see when who updated it, or when what is created, when was the record updated. All right. So this is not like something that you would put in your interface or your UI. That's why this is kind of the hidden field. So behind the scenes, you are just updating the date the record or the field was updated. All right, that is the purpose of this one. But again, you create your two methods in your schema definition, and then you create your model, and that's done. All right. Again, methods are part of your schema definition. The next part is to make them useful, you need to call these methods or functions. You need to call them, right? So in your server.js, just before inserting the data, we create an object of the model, the new user. You pass in the data, the /submit. Your request body has the JSON, and then you call those two methods: set full name, last updated date. Your user is going to get updated with those two fields, and then it's going to go ahead and insert in the database. Okay? Any questions on this part? Good? Kind of getting hang of it? Okay. All right, so the last feature for Mongoose is populate. All right. Any guesses what populate is or doing? So to give you a hint, we saw. Let me complete my hint. To give you guys a hint, we saw SQL, right? We saw create, read, update, delete. It's very similar to what we saw in SQLize or MySQL. So populate. Yes, Roy.
I was going to say, isn't it like seeding?
Seeding. Seeding. By seeding, you mean inserting the database, inserting the data.
Yeah.
I can see why that's what. Yeah, that's kind of a bad name for it then. Yeah. Not really.
I feel like an update to something that's in the schema but isn't filled out.
Close. Yeah, it's populating something. Yeah. Now I think about it, it's like a deceiving name actually. Yeah. Yeah. But I can see why they said it. But now I'm like, well, they should have called it something else. But I guess they're trying to get away from the MySQL perspective. That's why. So what is in MySQL that compares to this? You have like two tables and MySQL merging. What's the other name for it? Joins. So populate is the join of MongoDB. They don't have joins, huh?
That doesn't make sense.
I know.
Well,
So
you're trying to draw a line of logic there.
right. So the logic, right. The logic is since MongoDB doesn't have tables, right? So you cannot join two tables.
Right.
But it has collections, right? And you can join. Again, we don't use the keyword join. You can combine two collections, right? So what happens is, and what was if you guys remember what I said on Saturday, if you're joining two collections, a collection, what is it going to be? It's going to be like an object within an object within an object. If you have like two collections and you want them merged, basically you have an object and then you have basically another object within it. All right, tables, two tables, you join them, but when it comes to Mongo, there's no joining, there's no collection. What you do is you create an object, and within that object there's going to be another object, and another object could be another object, and this is how you like combine the data. So that's why they are calling it populate. What I think so, because you are populating a bigger object with some like smaller objects. Okay, but basically it's like joining two collections. Okay, so populate is combining two collections. Again, a word of caution: if you have too many collections and you're trying to join them, it's going to get super complicated. And the reason is, again, in the end, it's going to be an object within an object within an object within an object, object. Then you have to parse through all to get to the right part what you're looking for. So if you have like too many collections and you want to join them, I would suggest switch to MySQL. That's the better way if you have too many. Again, that's the drawback of MongoDB. If you have like too depth, you know, it's not highly recommended. It's kind of more for like individual collections or maybe one or two. But again, if you have like too many collections and all are kind of connected, just be warned that you have to parse through each object, go inside the depth, and come back up with whatever you're looking for. All right. So just make sure. But we'll see how populate works. Again, populate is you have an object, and then within that object you will have another collection object. All right. So let's take a look at what this example does. This is number 18. Okay. 18. Oh, that's okay. I think I already have this database created, that's why it's complaining. So let's see. Okay, so this is a really good example for populate. So in this example, we have a library and it has books, right? You can create a book. Right now, there's only one library. It's kind of hard-coded in the code, and all the books that you add will go to that library. All right, so the schema is so there are two collections, library and books. And if you think about it, a library contains books. So you'll have a library object which will contain books object. Okay? But in our database, these two are separate, and the populate method will help combining both of these, kind of join those two tables and get our data back. All right. So let's see what I have over here, or do I need to add something? Okay. So see your books. When I click this, so it's going to my books collection and getting my books back. All right. Just the books collection. If I go into my library, it goes into just my library collection and gets the data back. So look at the fields that are part of my library collection. So there's an array of books and an ID, and that's the library ID, and then the name of the library. Right? These books they only have the IDs that belong to the library. Right? This is a connection the library has with the books. So my library collection is just storing IDs. Right? When I have to combine them, remember from MySQL, when I combine two tables, I use their IDs to kind of get the data back. Similar concept over here. I'm only storing the IDs of books over here, and then when I combine both, and you see the last link, see your library populated with books. This combines both, and this is my data looks like. So it's still the same, the books array, but this time my books array has the complete details, and these details are coming from my books collection. Okay. Any questions on this before? We'll see the code. As long as you get the concept, the coding is it's kind of, yeah, probably like a couple of lines and should be good. But this is how you do it. Okay, again, when you are designing your projects or something, try to see how in depth you have to go. All right, and how easy it would be retrieving the data back. All right, these are like 2 collections. That's okay. If you can have like 4 or 5 collections, but see how many collections are dependent on each other. If there are like too many, again, your MongoDB is just JSON, right? So you'll have objects within an object within an object. So make sure those objects are easily accessible. If it's going to depth, try to see if MySQL serves the purpose. All right? The fast response of MongoDB kind of comes from being JSON objects, but if you have like too big or like too in depth, you're parsing a lot of data, kind of defeats the purpose. So just make sure it serves your use case. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look how the code is working now. Let's see. Let's take a look at our first thing is models. Okay, so what do you guys think? What's happening in my book.js? What are the 2 things I have to do to create my model? Anybody? You have to give it a schema. So I have to create a schema, and the second part, the second thing, defining the schema. Right. That's defining the schema, creating a schema, putting the name. What's the second one? I now have my schema. Create the model. Okay, we saw in the previous exercises the 2 things that we need in our model.js files are create the schema and then create that model. Okay, that is what I'm doing in my book.js. Okay, so I create my schema and then I create my model. That's all I'm doing. All right. Again, very important 2 things: model, schema, then model, and then make the connection over there. All right. So books is pretty simple. I'm creating my books model, which has schema in the model. Similar to books, my library, again, I'm defining my schema and I'm creating my model. So this is my, let me first, so I define my schema, I create my model, I'm done. All right. Now, if you look at the UI that we saw previously, when I click the population, the combination of library and books, my library object contained all my books. All right. So this means that when I'm defining my schema, I need to have that relationship inside the library because my library is going to contain my books. So I'm going to create that relationship. Now, if you look at the schema, the first is the name, straightforward. The books. Is it still running? Yeah. So you see, books is an array. All right. Because the library can have multiple books. So it has an array. The type is object ID. All right. Okay, so it says object ID and ref. That's the important part. This is what creates a relationship. So this is where you're telling that there is a model by the name of book that belongs over here. All right. Similar to MySQL, the foreign key concept. Remember when you were doing our SQLize, you were creating relationships. You were mentioning the dependent entity over here. This is the same thing. You create your books, and then you say that there is a model, and that's what it is referring to. Okay. Now the model should have an ID because I mentioned over here schema.object ID. If let's go back to our book, there should be a object ID. Okay, but when I look at my schema, there's no ID over here. Where is that ID coming from? It's auto-generated. Excellent. So MongoDB, remember there was a crazy 32 len string alphanumeric. It has object ID. It's auto-generated by MongoDB, and that's what it is saying. Yep. Yep. You can't change it. All right. So that's what it's saying over here. It's saying the books array is going to have an object ID and then the reference. All right. Any questions on this? Oops. Okay. So this is how you define the model. Now here's the interesting, I would say, design pattern. This is kind of useful, and take a look at this. So you see the index.js. So now if I have my book.js and library.js, what would I do in my server? How do I refer to them? I'll say require /book.js, require library.js. If I have 10 more, I'm going to keep 10 lines. All right. Another way to do it, you create another JS file and just put everything over here and export this out. One dependency for all your models. A kind of good design pattern. So what I'm doing over here is I'm creating my book reference, library reference. If I have 10 more, I'm going to create all my references. I'm going to put it in my models folder. Now I'm exporting this. So what I have to do in my server.js, I just have to refer to one, which is index.js. So if you take a look at this one, I just have to do .models. It's going to export the whole folder. And then if I want to refer to it, I just say db.library or db.book. Otherwise, I would have to, individually then create an object and then do it. But this is another way. Again, this is just a convenience. You can do it in separate ways. It's a good design pattern to follow, so that you don't have to write multiple times or multiple code.
So real quick, right here, it doesn't have anything to do with that index. It does /models.
Yeah, so it looks,
just the folder?
Right, that's just exports the whole folder, yeah.
Right, so now DB contains all of those. What was the point of index at that point?
Right, so if you see in my books.js, I'm not exporting anything. Oh, it does.
If you put a folder, it looks for an index.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so
Okay.
that's what, yeah. So that's what is happening. So Node.js will look for that file name, and then it's going to export everything which is you have defined over here. Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were saying something different. Sorry. All right. So that's why it's named indexer. That's the significance of exactly naming this. Kind of Node.js will look into it and try to find that file and then export everything that's in it. Okay. All right. So I'm going to. We'll come back to this later on. Oh yeah, this one. Okay. So line number 61, the /books. All right. What am I doing? I'm going to my collection, getting just my books. All right. Find function. That's what it should be doing. Find. Call my database for books. Returns all the books. Okay. Library goes in my database, finds the library. Right now I just have one library, so it will just return me one library. Okay, no changes. We have seen this before. The populate comes over here. So I have this route. What this does is it's going to combine both collections and send you the data back. db.library. I'm going to my library collection. I'm doing a find. All you have to do is just add one line, which is .populate and then the field that you're looking for, the collection name. Okay, so this is the collection name. Again, if you look at your schema, you would have book, and since we didn't specify any name, it's going to create a collection name called books. So that's the collection name that you're going to mention over here. Okay, that should bring you all the data that you're looking for. Again, dot populate, that's the function, and that's what it does. Okay, so two things we have added: ref keyword in our models, and then populate function in our when we are calling that. Just 2 lines of code. All right. So in the models, you're creating the relationship. Over here, you're calling that. All right. Let's see. The create function creates the library. Don't have to worry about that. Submit is okay, we'll take a look at submit. All right. Any questions on this one? Okay, so this is how you kind of combine. There's no keyword called join or anything, so I won't call it join. So that's how you populate, kind of combine 2 collections. All right. Take a look at this one too when you are submitting or adding to the database. This is where it's adding this ID. This is how it tells. So remember the $push we saw in the array part. So it is just pushing that book ID so that you can have the relationship when you're inserting it. But the main part is you create the relationship with the ref keyword and then use the populate method. So ref and populate. Okay. Take a look at the next exercise. It's again very similar. I think it's even the same example. Let's see. Populate, yep, very similar. Check the models and then look at the server and then write the find method, add the populate function, and this should give you the user. So this is going back to the exercises that we've been doing from the beginning, the user exercise, and this will bring you data, a node that is tied to a user.
backwards. And I see how you kind of do it. So like the relation would normally be on notes pointing back to
Right.
user, but this one it's user that holds
Right.
an array of notes.
Right.
It's like reverse.
Reverse, yeah. But it's kind of interesting that when I look at this context, it kind of makes sense. I'm like, okay, notes, the user, and all the notes are belong to the user. So it kind of makes sense that object will reside over there. But when you put it in tables, then kind of looks the opposite way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
A new viewpoint.
I guess that's why they don't call it join. That's why they don't call join in MongoDB. That's what they call it, populate.
Well, kind of makes sense because it just populates.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, right? Now it makes sense, right? The why they did it.
Yeah, it kind of does.
They're populating an object that resides in a different object.
Yeah.
With the complication you were talking about there, with it being inside of another one, inside of another one, what is this database mostly used for? Static information that you just have a lot of repetitions of?
Oh no. So MongoDB, it's if you have like separate collections, and some of the relationship is fine, but I'm saying if it's like too complicated or like kind of too many objects inside it. But this is used for when you do have a larger collection, and it's kind of a smaller data set. The JSON we always know that's kind of shrinked or like smaller size, and that's why the browser use the communication is in JSON format. So
Right.
this database kind of tells you, assures you that any data that I'm going to send you back is going to be in a JSON format.
Right.
So you can parse it easily or something. But as long as it is like not like couple of levels of JSON objects within it, it's
Right,
okay.
not bunches of levels.
Yeah, you might want to rethink your strategy if it's getting too complicated.
That makes sense.
But here's the interesting part now. Even MySQL, there's a database called MariaDB. I don't know if I mentioned this before. It's kind of fork of MySQL. It's literally like MySQL. The new version of MariaDB, and I've used it, it supports JSON columns. So you can have, it's kind of a combination of both. You can have tables, columns and everything, and a column can hold JSON data. And when you ask for it, it will actually go in, it has functions, it will parse the JSON and give you the exact what you like. So
No kidding.
yeah, it has combination of both things. So you have relationship and JSON column. I've used it. It's really nice to use it. Yeah. I was super excited when I learned about it and I used it. It makes life so much easier because you have a data that you want a relationship, but there's a lot of data that you're like, oh, if it was in JSON, it would be so nice. And MariaDB actually comes with both of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
So glad we're learning that in class.
Well, because it's not free. That's the other reason. Of course, anything that has too much functionality doesn't come free. So. Well, I use MariaDB at Walmart, so they bought the whole licensing, so that's why they had it. It's kind of nice. Right. Any questions on this? Let me show you this. It's similar to the same one. You have your Node.js. In your user schema, you have a reference to the node. All right. And then in your server.js, you are creating that relationship using the populate method. Where is it? And then passing the correction in that you have. Okay. Very similar to the previous one. All right. Any questions on this? All right, so the last exercise is, this should take you to the end of the class. I just need the last like 5 minutes to talk about some stuff. I take this exercise. Okay, the last one is very similar to what you guys are going to be doing homework. That is due next Thursday. Now we are doing the same scraping part, but we are using MongoDB. Oh, sorry, Mongoose this time. So let me show you how it looks like, and then you guys take a look at the unsolved one. Try as far as you can get, and then I'll post the solution at the end of the class. This is exercise number 20. Come on. So this is how it shows up. The first thing you'll have to type in scrape, and this will go ahead and, I'm not sure which website is using. We can look at the code. Let's see. I don't think it's New York Times here. echojs.com, whatever. You guys want to change it. So it's scraping from this, and it brings out all the news. So first thing we'll have to do is scrape so that it kind of gets everything, puts it in your MongoDB database. Now if I go back, this will have all the things. Okay, so the scrape route is what it is doing is going scraping the website and then putting it in your MongoDB. All right. When you come back to your home page, it has all the news, whatever information that is scraped out. Right. When you click anything, let's say this one, this screen pops up, and then you can add a node. So it's kind of combining scraping exercise, the node exercise, kind of all together. Right. The UI is already built. You just need to complete the routes. So over here you can put in nodes, node detail 1, save the node. It goes and saves it. So when I come back and click it, this node should be retrieved from the database. All right, you can click add other nodes to it. And from what I saw, it's kind of very similar to your homework. So go ahead, take a look at it, see how far you can get, and then at the end of the class, I'll post the solution. So when you're doing your homework, do take a look at it. So the scraping part is already done for you. All right, so you don't have to worry about the scraping part. Just look at the routes. These routes, getting the data, showing it, saving back the, well, they're calling it notes or articles, saving it back to your MongoDB. All right. So that should take to the end of the class. I just need like 5 minutes towards the end of the class, not even 5, maybe like a couple of minutes. We'll talk about the next lessons, and then that should be it for today. All right. So do take a look at this exercise, see how far you can get. Let's see. Yep. So server date, this is the only file that you need to make changes to.
So you can install or so you should probably should have Mongo installed. Yeah. So you have to install it. You code it. Yeah. If you just do Mongo, just write Mongo. So you can do npm install -g space install MongoDB or is it then you can install where you install it from the group. Oh yeah, you have to do the whole thing. Yeah. So what we did on Saturday, were you able to install Mongo on Saturday? Doesn't look like that installed yet. Okay. So go to it's in supplement. Go to your GitLab in the supplement folder. I know. Supplemental folder. So first, before I do this, I think I'm starting yeah. You will do this one. Yeah, so you'll have to do this before you can start. Good here.
I'm trying to piece it together, but like I remember from this other one how you hold on a minute. There's the method, but I'm trying to remember. You have to reference. You have to reference the database.
So start with in this one.
Yeah, it's that one.
So this get, start with this one. So you are just getting, so there's no populate, there's no nothing. You're just using the find method and getting everything from there. So look up the find method from the previous exercises.
Okay.
Just,
Got it.
that's what you're trying. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
The first round.
Yeah.
Just the simple find method.
Just follow those directions and you should get.
So if you look at the first one, where do you find the find one?
Yeah, I did find it. Let's see where to go. And then let's see where to go. Wait a minute, I'm in the wrong one, I think. I need to be here. And then let's see. Okay, we were in this one. I just need to change the database.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
I think so.
So guys, I have posted the solution for this one, and after the class, if you have any question, let me know. I'll be here. We can go through it. I just need 5 minutes if you guys can focus. I'm going to talk about. So this is the end of MongoDB Mongoose lecture part. Of course, when you go into React, you'll be using some of the database also. Now from here onward, week 19, 20, and 21 are going to be React. Right, so we have 3 weeks of React. Saturday, Carson is teaching. Well, there will be introduction. Now, it's not going to be exactly React on Saturday. Now, you guys have been hearing about React. I've been even excited about it. So, all your learning starting from JavaScript, Node.js, even handlebars, all this knowledge is going to come into play when you start working on React. Okay? Especially after Saturday's class, I would highly recommend you guys go back and whatever lecture on Saturday is, it's really, really important. It's not exactly React. So on Saturday, you guys are going to look at ES6. Right? If you guys remember, ES6 was the latest version or the next version of JavaScript. We talked a little bit about it in previous classes. Right? So we saw let, const, those 2 keywords we have been using. Those are part of what I said ES6, the next version of JavaScript. There are a lot more features in ES6, and React uses a lot of them. So it is absolutely necessary that you understand what features come in ES6, and that's what's going to be on the Saturday's class. All right. After Saturday's class, you guys should be able to look at the React documentation and understand how to create a React application, to be honest. All right? Go through the React documentation after Saturday. So, in my opinion, React.js is kind of going to become the jQuery of our time. Right? If you look at some old websites at a company, you will definitely see jQuery embedded over there. Like people used to use jQuery, right? Today, React, I feel like React is going in that direction. A lot of companies are shifting towards it. From my experience at Walmart, total paradigm shift. And they were like, oh, just keep doing React now. So they were converting their websites into React. USA currently also is changing their direction. They are moving all their website to React. So there are a greater chance that a company that you go to would be using React. And again, as I said, it's becoming really popular. Well, it's not becoming, it's already really popular. And Facebook is really good about keeping it updated, kind of making it easier to understand and learn. But again, a warning, React does have a learning curve, right? So that's why Saturday's ES6, all the features that you will learn, React kind of uses them, and they heavily uses it, okay? So make sure after Saturday, go back and make sure you understand all the concepts, because you will see those coming back in React, all right? Kind of React uses them. After Saturday, I would definitely, this is a time, guys, put a lot more time now in understanding React. Again, it does have a learning curve. Once you get it, it's kind of easier, but initially, when you look at it, when you see it, it will kind of a little bit be difficult. But once you get it, it's fine, right? So after Saturday class, we have Sunday, Monday. Put some extra time into it. Learning it, it's really important. Kind of the industry is kind of going in the direction, so this is the time to kind of learn it right now, so that whatever features come in, even though if React goes away, the concept that they're using is kind of going to be stay. Somebody else will come, but the concepts of React, even the new library is going to have it. So it's a good thing to learn. And again, as I said, industry is moving towards it, so there's a high chance that you are going to encounter React for a long time for long. Okay, again, ES6 Saturday, very important. It's not exactly React, but the concept that you see in ES6 are going to be used in React. So take a good note. Focus much on the Saturday class, go back and then kind of study them back. On Tuesday would be the actual introduction of React. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on you guys like my teaching or not, I'm not here on Tuesday. I have to travel to San Antonio to visit the headquarters. So there's going to be a substitute teacher. But again, please, after Saturday, you have all the tools necessary to learn React. React docs, the React actual Facebook React site, that actually is probably the best documentation for React over there. And again, as I said, Facebook is really good about it. They keep updating their documentation. They try to make it easier to learn. So please, after Saturday, go and take a look at React, create a sample app. They have a lot of tools over there. It's kind of, a minute, it will create a React app for you, all right? Tuesday, and I'll see you guys on Thursday. We'll be getting a more concept for React. So it's Saturday and Tuesday, very important classes, so make sure you guys understand that, all right? I'll be here for now. Let me know if you have any questions on the current one. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on Thursday, next Thursday. All right? All right, see you guys. Oh yeah, homework is also due next Thursday. I've uploaded the homework. Take a look at it. It's kind of scraping homework, similar to it. Similar to this exercise. Take a note of this solution. Look at the homework. Homework is due on next Thursday. You guys do the homework that is due today? Updating the profile or something? Did it? Okay.
Another one.
Take your profile again. Yeah.
It's updated?
Just gotta upload it then. Put it in the link.
Put the link up there.
Project 2.
Yeah.
Part of the time, the find one is all the rec params ID. Is it actual find one or just find and then
This one?
Yeah.
Once we get
Public So the ID is coming from the rec params, yeah. And then these are two different problems like this.
Take it. Take it and run. Take it and run.
Just for the
and the find,
relationship.
The
Yeah.
find one and update that function in months.
Yep.
Documentation.
Yep.
That's right. I found one and I didn't
Oh,
do
you
the
didn't find
update. I didn't do the update. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
Hey there, dude. Later, guys. Later.
You go on Venus.